India City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
Up on the screen, so I don't have to read it. So while you're looking at that, let me tell you about today's speaker. Today's speaker is Lee Stevens with Business Class Asia in Bangkok. We'll talk about how to avoid insurance, taxation and financial problems in Thailand. Do we have financial problems in Thailand? No, I don't think so. No. I try and avoid financial problems, especially when you've got no money. Lee has been in the financial industry for nearly 30 years, having worked for the Midland Bank in England, I presume, and HSBC for 10 years, dealing with personal customers and then advising business clients, ranging from small to medium-sized enterprise to multinational companies. So to tell us more about insurance, taxation and financial problems, Lee Stevens.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite down here today. Thank you for Anne Smith and Ren for organising. Appreciate that. Okay, and Ren's got to hold the microphone a bit closer. Okay. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about wills, trusts, and how they can help you with your finances over here in Thailand and overseas. The financial problems are not necessarily caused by a lack of money, but a lack of organisation on how to spread the money if anything goes wrong. So I will kick off with my presentation. I work for Business Class Asia. And we're a part of a group of companies which are based out of Hong Kong. So Business Class Asia is the Thailand arm of the Hong Kong office. Hong Kong is one of the most regulated places on the planet. It's the third biggest financial center in the world, and it's the only non-country to sit on the OECD, which is something from its past that it's carrying on doing. So as a company, we tend to focus more on protection, so looking after the money, making sure it gets to the right people at the right time. Investments tend to come out of, investment advice would come out of Hong Kong. It's not necessarily generated here in Thailand. And we're trust and retirement specialists. That's what we do. We help people plan for retirement, and we help people plan for when things don't go according to plan, or eventually when things come to a stop. We do have different things available. We concentrate on wills, but we also, as a part of that planning, can include things like life cover. You know, if you have young children and you have guardians, and the guardians can't bring the children up in the way that you would want, you may put some life cover in place to provide them with the money. And we also do health and medical insurance, just to make sure that you actually get there without having to spend all your savings on operations. Okay, so we're all quite weird over here, really. Most people in the world stay in their home countries. They don't tend to go and live abroad. So when you move abroad, you tend to leave behind a lot of things which probably people in the home countries take for granted. So you leave behind family, you might leave behind assets like a house, bank accounts and so on. But you could also leave behind life cover, pensions. If you're working overseas, you may have to give up the pension and the benefits that you get from your company back in your home country, and then you move abroad and then you're left to organize them yourself. A lot of people don't organize, they just basically forget about that. So when you leave your home country, you leave behind some issues, and then you start building up further assets when you get to your new country. So you'll open a bank account, you might buy a house, You might do some investments. You might organize your retirement or get remarried, have a new family or whatever it is. But you're building up issues in your original country, and then you're building up more issues in your new country. Okay? When you move overseas, you change your residency. You don't necessarily change your domicile. And that's quite important. Domicile is basically where you were born, what passport you hold, where you're a citizen of. Okay? Residency is where you are at any given moment in time. So me personally, I've been overseas since 2001. I'm still probably domiciled in the UK. So I'm still subject to the UK in terms of things like death duties. They would still look at me and say, okay, we can tax you. But I'm resident in Thailand. I don't pay income tax in the UK, but if there's a worldwide tax, or if you're American, you can still end up paying tax back in the States or the UK. So what we do is we work out the best way of either mitigating that, taking you out of that. We can give advice on how to become non-domiciled. Okay, so you can, in effect, choose a domicile of choice. So for me, I could say, actually, I don't want to be domiciled in the UK anymore. My home is now Thailand. I built up club memberships, I've got a house, I've got a family here, my children go to school here, my life is here. And I can contact the Inland Revenue and say, my life is now in Thailand, my domicile of choice is now Thailand. And they probably won't write back and say, yes, you're right. They'll probably write and say, okay, that's noted. So they can come back later and change if they want to. But what people don't often realize is if I take Thailand as my domicile of choice, and then I decide to retire in Bali, I've changed my domicile of choice, and I would automatically revert back to the UK, and then I have to build up my relationship with Bali, and then recontact the Inland Revenue to say my domicile of choice is now Bali. Okay? And there's normally a time gap between, leaving one and building up another. And now that's quite important, because if I'm registered as domiciled in the UK and I die, the British government can come and look at my assets, they can freeze my assets, and they can basically go, this is my tax bill. Okay? And until you pay that tax bill, all your assets are frozen. You can't get at them. Okay, so I have a problem, my wife can't get out the money, the UK government has frozen my assets, and until I can pay the tax, they're not going to release them, but I can't pay the tax until I sell something. So it can create issues. Okay? So people often assume when they've been overseas for a certain period of time, they're automatically not domiciled in their home country, and that's not always the case. Okay? So looking at what we do, what we actually do is say, right, let's have a look at what you've got. Let's have a look at how it's planned. Let's have a look at how it's set up. Okay? If the worst case happens, you become seriously ill or you die, what do you want to happen to your money? Who do you want it to go to? Okay? And have you prepared for that eventuality? Okay? Have you documented who you want it to go to? Are people aware actually what you have? Because often people will open up an offshore bank account, but they may not tell anyone they've got it. So they end up, they die suddenly, someone comes in to administer their estate and distribute it, they don't know you have a bank account, they can't go to every bank and say, did this person have an account? So you should have a copy of your assets readily available with your will, so when people turn up, they know what you've got, they know where your bank accounts are. You don't have to put how much is in it, but account name, account number, where it is, what bank it is, and then they can follow through on it. If you sell something and you buy something else, take it off and put the new one back on there, but keep it updated. Okay? But the main thing you need to look at is, have you got that will dictating how you want it to be distributed? Because if you don't, someone else will decide for you. Okay? And they don't know your family circumstances, they don't know your situation, they don't know who you want to leave it to and by how much, and they will just literally sit down and decide from a blank piece of paper going, right, this person can have this much because they're this relative and so on. Okay? So dictate, you've worked hard, you build up your money, it should be up to you how it gets distributed, not some stranger sitting in a court. Okay? So these are different things you can build up. If you build up assets in different jurisdictions, realistically you should have a will for each jurisdiction you build up the assets in. You can only put a will through one jurisdiction at a time. So if you have money in the UK, you have some in Australia, you have some in Thailand, and maybe some in the Isle of Man. Okay? You have one will in the UK. So you have to put it through the UK. That can take 3 to 6 months. Okay? You then reseal it, and then you take it to Australia, and you go through the same process, maybe 3 to 6 months, then Thailand, then the Isle of Man. Okay? You could be dead in your box for 2 years, and there's still someone trying to sort out the problems of distributing your estate. If you have a will in each jurisdiction, then they can process them all at the same time. 3 to 6 months, all the money's out. Okay, so just look at where your assets are, and if you planned for each different jurisdiction. In terms of us writing wills, I would normally do up to 3 jurisdictions for the same price as one, if the wills are basically the same, the distributions are the same. If they're completely separate wills, then we would have to charge you for each individual one. But if it's just literally, to my wife and then to my children in each case, we can just change the jurisdiction and have it applicable. Okay, so the will, in effect, is the basis of all planning. Everything is reliant. There's no point in having loads of money if it can't get to the people you want it to get to when they need it. Okay? It can make sure that the assets pass to someone that you choose, not someone else. If you have young children, I know a lot of people come to Thailand, they often remarry, they have young children again. Have you sorted out a guardianship? Okay? Not so important if your children are Thai, because they have relatives here. But if there's anyone in the room that has young children, and they're both expats and the children are expats, bear in mind what happens to that child if you both die in a car crash. Okay? The government has the responsibility to make sure that child is okay. So it would go into government care. They have the responsibility of ensuring that the person who turns up saying, I'm responsible for these children, they have to prove that they are responsible for those children, and the government has to prove them taking the children out of the country. Okay? That can take time. If you haven't documented who you want that person to be, it can take a long time. If there's a document showing, in the event of us both dying, my children will be looked after by my sister, okay, your sister can turn up with that document and go, look, I have the right to take that child, and then go, okay, fine, fair enough. Okay, so it says that it wishes. We can use it for tax planning. We can mitigate some death taxes with it. We still need to do probate. Even if you have a will, it still needs to go to court, and the judge needs to basically say, yes, it's valid, and issue a grant, what they call a grant of probate. The grant of probate gives the executor or the person in charge of the will the ability to encash your money and bring it all together. So he can go to a bank with a grant of probate saying, I'm responsible for this money now, please give it to me. Unless you have a grant of probate, you can't access the money because you have no legal authority to do so. That can take 3 to 6 months with a will. Okay? If you don't have a will, then you die intestate. Okay? And each individual country has its own intestacy rules. Normally what they say is, if you die without a will, 50% of your estate will pass to your wife, the other 50% goes between your wife and your children. If you don't have a wife, it will pass equally between your children. If you don't have children, it will go to parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters. If they can't find anyone, if you have no relatives, then the government will keep your money. Okay, so someone in Thailand, nice senior person, probably walking past a nice watch shop, when you have no relatives, and he's going to buy a nice watch out of your money. Okay, and it also enables you to list your assets. So you can put a bigger list in each jurisdiction that you have. Everyone knows what you've got, and also you're not going to get money going missing. There's billions of pounds held in bank accounts because people didn't know they had an account there. And when they've died. Okay? So the main points of the will are you set out to establish executors. Executors are the people responsible for administering your will. Normally, you would go to the spouse first off as a single executor to make things easy. But if you both die together, you need a reserve executor to basically take over and administer the will. Okay? And then often you need a reserve, just to make sure that if that person dies before you, that there's someone else that can follow through. Okay? Same thing for guardians. If you're appointing a guardian, we appoint the main guardian, and then we'll appoint a reserve, because the main guardian might not be in a position to be able to look after your children when you need them to. Financially, maybe ill health or whatever. Trustees, if your children are underage, they can't inherit the money straight away. They would have to wait until they're 18 or 25, depending on what you want them what age you want them to benefit. So we can set a trust up which holds the money. Our trust structures are based out of Hong Kong. They're very easy to set up, they're very inexpensive, and they're completely flexible, so you can take the money out whenever you want. Okay? But it's already set up for your children just in case something goes wrong. You can put special requests in. You might want to do organ donation, for example, so you might want to put that in your will. But you might want to donate your organs to someone that needs them and not necessarily donate yourself for medical research, because then you may be on a slab in front of 300 students or with a nice shiny scalpel waiting to get in there. So you can dictate how you want things. Okay, a will is fairly simple to do. It basically lists what you want it to do, and then it has to be signed by 2 independent witnesses. Normally, if you go to a lawyer, they will charge you for the will. They will set it out exactly as you tell them without any further advice. They will just document what you say. They will charge you for the time of the first meeting, the writing of the will, the time of the second meeting, and then when you ask them to sign it as a witness, they'll charge you for that as well. Okay? What we do in terms of wills is all the preliminary meetings are free. Okay? We will find out exactly what you want. Then we will go back, we will formulate a will, we will send you a draft copy. You then check it, make sure it's okay. If it's all agreeable, then we meet again, and then that's when we sign, and we will sign it for free. Okay? The cost of a will, we do them out of Hong Kong. Hong Kong's a lot more expensive. We have special rates here in Thailand. It's normally 15,000 baht for a single will, 20,000 baht for husband and wife, if they're pretty much mirroring each other. And like I said, no extra cost. And normally what we would do is take half up front, half at the end. Because we have experienced occasions when, I wrote the will, you send it off, and then they never come back, and I've done loads of work for nothing. Okay, so it's inexpensive, it's easy to get at, and we make sure it's right. The other thing we can do is we can give you background advice on the will. So if you need life cover, we can organize that. If you need tax planning, we can organize that. If you need to look at death duties, we can do it. If you need a trust, we can set that up. So we can do all the different things around the will, as well as provide the will itself. Okay? This is basically saying that if you haven't got a valid will, what happens? I've covered that. It can take years. We had a client die 8 years ago. He had 1 house and 1 son and 1 bank account. And it's still not distributed yet because he didn't have a will. So that's 8 years. So it can take a long time. It can cause a lot of financial issues while you're waiting. If your wife can't access money, your family can't access money because it's sitting waiting for a court to make a decision, they have to sit back and wait. Okay? And it might be more than 1 jurisdiction that they're waiting on. There may be tax bills in different jurisdictions that you need to cover before they'll release it. And the other issue that we sometimes come across is people remarry. They have children from a previous marriage back in their home country. They have new children here. Often, in that case, if it goes to court, everything will pass down through your Thai family, for example. And your children in your home country may not benefit. Or they may benefit if you don't want them to. it's entirely up to the court on how it goes. But children from previous marriages can, you often need to make special provision for them. Okay, so as of us, we're members of the the UK Will Writers Association out of Hong Kong. The wills that we do are valid in all jurisdictions where they're appropriate. In Europe, for example, they have civil law as opposed to common law. So wills don't tend to be valid. They have a set of rules called forced heirship that dictates how you distribute estates. So if you have a house in France, for example, that house will follow the forced heirship rules. It doesn't matter what we put in a will. Okay? It has to follow the rules of the country that they're in. So common law countries tend to be the ones that the UK's invaded at some point in the past, and the other ones tend to be continental Europe. Okay, so again, we can give a lot of background information. Okay. Once you have the will set up, you may then want to look at a trust structure. Okay? What the trust structure will do is take money out of your estate, give you complete control over it, but put it somewhere else. Okay? So our trust structures come out of Hong Kong. Very strong legal system based on the UK. It's very heavily regulated. The court system is very free and independent, so they will back you up. So we use Hong Kong. It's a little bit more freer to move money around in Thailand as well. So our head office in Hong Kong gives us the ability to do this. So basically, a trust was set out during the Crusades. A lord would go across to Jerusalem and he'll be fighting. Okay, someone needs to run his estate while he's away, but he doesn't want to give it away because he might come back at some point and want to revisit it. So what he did was he appointed someone that he trusted to run the estate while he's away, and then when he comes back, it would automatically pass back to him. Okay, so he's got control over it, he's just absent at that time. So that's what a trust is, basically. You place your money in the hands of a responsible person who looks after it according to your wishes. You can dictate what happens within that trust, but it's separate from you. Okay? So as far as the UK government is concerned, the money's not in your estate. So if you died, it's not subject to death duties. Okay? 3 different types of trust. There's a bare trust, a discretionary trust, and a pension trust. A bare trust is when you give money away completely. Okay? You have no ownership of it, you can't take it back, you can't alter where it's gone. It's just given away. So you have no control over it whatsoever. That's treated in the UK, for example, as a tax-free gift. It's basically you pass it across, as long as you live for 7 years, you're fine. The discretionary trust is basically when you give money over to someone, to a trustee, you appoint a beneficiary on it, but you can alter the terms. So you can decide 5 years later that you don't want that person to get it, you want this person. Okay? You can change things. That has slightly different tax treatment in the UK. So it can be taxable. If you put too much money into something like that, because you have the ability of pulling it back out and keeping it again, they tax you half the amount for putting it in if you're above the allowance, so 325. And then you have a pension trust. A pension trust is exactly what it says. It's a pension. It's written under a trust, so if you die, the money would pass across to your beneficiaries free from tax. Okay? So it tends to be based on income. So past income that you've earned, you can put into a pension trust. Personal pensions, company pension schemes, and so on, they would be based on a pension trust. Okay? Our pension trusts are out of Hong Kong, and they're based on the Hong Kong Also Scheme rules, so Occupational Retirement Scheme Ordinance. Hong Kong rules are completely different to UK and elsewhere. There's no set retirement age on their pensions. If you're a professional footballer with loads of money, you can retire at 32 if you want. If you want to put all your money out, you can take it out. Okay? You can take as much income as you want. There's no limits, there's no gap rates, there's no government actuarial department saying you can only get this amount of money out. It's up to you. And you can put it all out at any point. Okay? That makes it very useful to us. As it's a Hong Kong also scheme, which is the Hong Kong occupational scheme, it's recognized by the OECD. Okay? It's regulated by the MPFA, the Pension Authority of Hong Kong. It's an official occupational pension scheme. And the OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, recognizes it. Now that's quite important because what that means is if there's a dual tax agreement between Hong Kong and the country where you're resident, this trust will fall under the DTA. Okay? So, for example, there's a DTA between Thailand and Hong Kong. There's one between the UK and Hong Kong. If you're American, unfortunately there isn't. If you're Australian, then they're talking about it at the moment, but they haven't actually agreed it yet. Now, depending on the DTA and the terms it states, it normally states that Hong Kong, or the place where your pension is regulated and registered, has taxing rights. Okay? And then they can't double tax it because it's been taxed in that jurisdiction. Hong Kong, very low tax jurisdiction. They tax pensions, but they tax it at zero. Okay, so there's no tax in Hong Kong for pension income. So if you're in the UK, you're receiving your money from your Hong Kong pension trust. It's already been taxed in Hong Kong at zero. By the time it gets to the UK, they can't tax you on it again. And you can take out as much money as you want. So if you've got £1 million in it, you could have £50,000 a year paid to you, and it will be tax-free. If you've held the pension for it needs to be recognized as a pension plan. So you need to hold it for a few years before you can start drawing the money. Okay? But it's a very, very tax-efficient way of getting money out. At the same time, it takes your assets out of your estate, out of death duty, out of probate, and out of creditors. Okay? So the trustees we use are ILS World. 7 offices globally and about 10 billion under their administration. Okay? They're a big company. The money doesn't pass through us. It goes directly from you to them. They're responsible for it. They have the responsibility of making sure they act in your interests. Okay? So there's an extra layer of protection for you. Because it's in Hong Kong, it falls under Hong Kong regulations. So we're probably the only company I know of that's bringing Hong Kong regulations to Thailand, which is pretty unregulated. Okay? It means you have to do a lot more paperwork, but it also means you get a lot more protection. Okay? You can set all the details of how the money gets distributed. Okay? You can set the age that people will benefit. You can set the amount. You can decide whether they get an income or they get a lump sum. It's entirely up to you. Okay? But the big thing that it does do is it saves you a lot of tax. Okay? If you're from the UK, anything you have above £325,000, there is a different rules with regard to housing, but basically 325,000, anything in addition to that is going to be taxed at 40% if you're deemed to be domiciled and they want to get you. So if you have an estate, I don't know, 600,000, 625,000, 300,000 of that will be subject to tax at 40%. Okay, 120k, gone. Put it into the trust, it all passes down to the people you want it to get to. Okay, so our trust is called Satyria. Okay, it's just it's actually the goddess of safety. I think the Greek goddess of safety. Okay, so it's very transparent what you get when you get a trust. You know the charging structure. You know how much it's going to cost. You know how much you can get out. Okay, everything is there, black and white. There's no hidden fees. There's nothing we try and hide from you. It's basically very, very clear. You get the tax freedom. Okay, if you're in a jurisdiction with a DTA, you get tax-free money, or tax-paid money at zero. Okay, you've got the security of Hong Kong, the Hong Kong legal system. You've got the security of the money not being in Thailand. It's outside of Thailand, in a very regulated area. Within the trust, you can have a choice of what you want to put your money in. So you can have it in bank accounts, you could have it in guaranteed options, you could put it into different kinds of investments, you could bring shares in. Okay? The choice is yours on what you want to invest in. Okay? And it's value for money. the cost of setting this out, 250 US administration fee to start it up, and then 250 US a year for the first year, okay, or up to 1.2% of what you have in it. Okay, but if you're going to put a large amount in, we can talk about that. But it's very clear, it's very transparent. Within it, we said about the choice of different investments. Okay, if you choose an investment to go in it, that investment may have its own charging structure and its own rules. Okay, all we're offering is the flexibility of pulling your money out of trust at any time with no surrender penalties. Okay, within that, you may have different terms with the investments that are held, but you can take those investments intact out of the trust free of charge. Okay, why we use Hong Kong? It's the third biggest financial centre in the world. I don't know if anyone's lived in Hong Kong, but they obey the rules very, very well. There's no getting around them. We like that. We think it's very safe for people. So just a quick overview. Okay, no income tax on distribution if there's a DTA. Okay, no tax on interest in deposits because it's in the trust. No capital gains tax. Okay, no inheritance tax because technically the owner of the money hasn't died. It's just a member that's passed on and they're distributing the benefits. No dividend tax, very highly regulated, and it's a common law jurisdiction. Okay, we like all of those things. We think it's very safe, and we think it's a very good place to put money. And very, very tax efficient. Okay, so that just covers basically what I've already said. There is no retirement age in Hong Kong, and there are no surrender fees. Okay, so if you decide that China's taking too much control of Hong Kong, and you don't like it anymore, you can just basically say, give me my money back. Okay? If the situations change, you might need to do that. So we made it very flexible. In terms of cost of getting in, by the way, a lot of people look at trusts and go, I've got to be a millionaire to have a trust. We can start this trust off with a minimum of £10,000. Okay, but my advice would be, don't do anything at a minimum level because the charges tend to be a little bit higher percentage-wise, depending on the amount put in. But £10,000 is what you can start your trust off with. Okay. Civil law countries can have some problems in recognizing trusts. They don't like it, like I said, they don't recognize the will, they have forced heirship. Okay? A lot of countries, France for example, don't like trusts. Okay? So if you put money in your French and you put it into a trust, they will tax you really heavily on it, like 70%. Okay? But if it's a pension trust, it's a pension contribution, they will not tax you. Okay? And then you can get all the benefits, as we said before. You can decide where your money goes outside of the forced heirship rules. Okay? So you can actually use this to get, not around the French system, but to actually make it work for your advantage. If you're British, no IHT. If you're US, okay, it is 402B compliant. We do also offer a specific service for US citizens in terms of we have an excellent guy who can look at US tax for you. And if you have a pension arrangement in the US, okay, 401k or whatever, you can actually move the money out of the US, and we use Malta for this. And because of the Thai-US Friendship Treaty from 1800 and something, and the DTA between Malta and Thailand, you can put your money into Malta in a pension scheme and receive the money tax-free in Thailand. It only works in Thailand, it doesn't work anywhere else, and it's due to the Friendship Treaty. But basically, you know, if you're in excess of the 95,000 US a year, you can move your money over and get that tax-free. Okay, but we have a tax specialist that works all that through. That's not my field. American tax is very, very stringent, and it's very specialized, so we use a specialist to look at that for you. But we can help with that. Australia, you can take all the advantages from the trust, but the DTA doesn't exist at the moment, but they are talking about it. Hong Kong is very, very active in pursuing DTAs. It's trying to get as many as it possibly can. Okay? This is the list as was maybe 6 months ago. Okay, so you can see up there, Thailand, UK, if you're going to retire to Vietnam, it's there. The Dutch friends from earlier on, Holland's up there if you want to go back to Holland. Australia's talking about one. There's been 3 more DTAs since we had this printed. Norway, India, and the last one's eluding me. But this is getting added to all the time. We keep having to go back to reprint to add more. But what you can do is you can go onto a website in Hong Kong which lists all the DTAs that they have and the ones that they're currently negotiating. So if your country is not on there, then it may be.
I'm sorry, I must have missed. What's a DTA?
DTA, dual tax agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it means that they can't double tax you, depending on the DTA, because some of them are a little bit different, but on the whole it means that Hong Kong has taxing rights on the pension in its jurisdiction. Okay, so the other option we have is what we call Satirial Light. Okay, this is the discretionary trust we talked a little bit about before. It's basically the same as the previous one, the worldwide, but it's not pension based, so it doesn't fall under the DTAs. But it does take your money out of inheritance tax, it does take it out of probate. But if you're from the UK, for example, we would recommend that you limit your investment into this to 325,000 every 7 years. So it drops out of your estate. Okay, and as it's dropping out, you will find the tax rate will come down, but it takes 7 years to get out of your estate. Okay. The one reason we use this is if you want to put some life cover in place. Okay, so you have young children, you want to insure your life for $500,000 US, and you want it to go to your children to benefit them, what we would suggest is you put it into a trust. Okay? What we're finding is that because the trust is based in Hong Kong, we can often access Hong Kong products, okay, which tend to be better than the Thai products. So life insurance policies, for example, we can access Friends Provident in Hong Kong, we put it in there. But with the worldwide one, the pension one, Friends Provident didn't recognize what we call an insurable interest. They say there's no insurable relationship between a pension and you. Okay, so what we did is we brought out a discretionary option to mainly put life cover in, because there's an insurable interest. Thank you. Okay. So if that's of interest, we would use a discretionary trust for the life cover. Okay, so we use the trust for several different things. The main purpose of the trust is retirement planning. We're retirement specialists, so we use it to let people build up money to provide income for them when they stop work, or to maximize the tax efficiency of money they've already saved when they've already stopped work. Okay, so we would then use the worldwide for this. We can put all sorts of different investments in it, depending on what you want. We can access portfolio managers. Okay, we don't give personally any investment advice here in Thailand. Okay, we don't do it. A lot of the time, advisors are putting people into funds where they're earning income from it, and it's not in the client's interest. We don't want that, so we basically said, right, we don't make investment decisions, they're made somewhere else. You just tell us what you're looking for. Okay, you can get money when you want. You can sell and buy within the trust. You can hold property within it, but I probably wouldn't recommend it, particularly if it's UK property, because it can cause some issues, and you can't borrow from the trust, so it has to be a cash purchase anyway. You can get access without penalty. The rules for the individual investment held within the trust will apply. It's tax effective. You can pass it down from generation to generation. It doesn't have to stop when you die. You can basically just let it go down. No probate is, to me, one of the main benefits of this, because your dependents can get immediate access to money when you die, and they haven't got to wait for a court to make that decision. Okay? The other things that we do in terms of retirement planning is we use a lot of international property. It's a great asset to hold. You physically own a property. The property will do what the market says it's going to do without any interference from anybody else. There's no managers looking after it, so the price goes up, or sometimes the price goes down. But in the UK, you tend to find the downs are far outweighed by the ups. You know, it goes up by 15, it drops by 2. It goes up by 15, it drops by 2. That's what we've seen. But there's no guarantee that's going to carry on. But we think it's a strong enough trend that we would consider UK property as a very good investment. At the same time, you're getting a rental income from it if it's rented. That doesn't affect the value. Okay, so your value can still be going up at the same time as you taking an income. Okay, so a lot of the yields might be 5-6%, the capital growth might be 5-6%, and it's going up. So we do property in London. London drives the UK market. It's a great place to invest. Prices since Brexit are all starting to come down. The number of transactions has been very small over the last couple of years. London's been affected more than any other area by Brexit. But what we saw at the beginning of this year, when the deadline was the 29th of March, people suddenly went, there's an opportunity here and I'm going to miss it. Sterling's very low, the exchange rate's very favourable, no one's buying at the moment, I can get in before all the prices start going up once Brexit is sorted. Okay? Either way, no deal or stay in, there was a decision that had to be made. So what I saw, particularly beginning part of the year, was people were rushing in because they were frightened to miss that opportunity. Unfortunately, Mrs. May then deferred it to later on in the year, so everyone's sitting back and waiting again. But it still means that there's that opportunity there. Sterling at the moment is about 37 baht for a pound. Normally 55, maybe 60, it has been up as high as 70 before. But you're trading at probably near the low point of it. I'm not saying it can't drop further, but you're probably at a very good rate. That means you have an advantage over people in the UK that are paying in sterling. You're getting a currency appreciation on top of your capital growth and your rental income, assuming that they continue to go up. Okay, Manchester, Birmingham are two other areas we look at. What we find with property, same in Bangkok, same anywhere, if you increase the infrastructure to that place, the price goes up. You put a train station somewhere, you can see it happening at the moment in Samron. They put a train station in, and then all the prices go up. Okay, what's happening in Birmingham, and also to a lesser extent Manchester, they're building a high-speed rail link. Birmingham at the moment, hour and 40 minutes by train from Birmingham to London. Once the high-speed rail link's in, 37 minutes from the centre of Birmingham to the centre of London. Okay, that makes it commutable. So basically what's happening is people are now buying in Birmingham, paying Midlands prices and earning London salaries. Well, they will be once the train line's complete anyway. So what we're seeing is the prices in Birmingham are going up to compensate for that. Manchester's the same, but the time scales are a little bit different. It's an hour and 10 minutes as opposed to 2. But Manchester, Birmingham, they're booming parts of the UK. If you look back over the last 2 or 3 years, they're the areas that are growing the most, 5 to 6%. And the last property report that came out, I think it was about March, for the first time since Brexit, every area increased in value. So, you know, to me, properties are a great way to go. It's fully managed. We can organise mortgages if necessary, but we have people in place putting tenants in there for you and then running it. We can also do flexible deposit arrangements, but the main part of it is you look at it, it's an investment property, you look at the growth potential, you look at the yield, and you see if it fits in with what you're looking for, and then obviously we have to provide it. Okay? I'll just press the wrong one there. Okay, so this is one example. This is in Manchester. It's called The Press. It's a conversion of an old printing press building. Okay, this is the inside. I did stretch it to fix the box, so it probably looks a little bit bigger than it is, but it's still a good size. Okay, there's the kitchen. Okay, this one's in central Birmingham. New build finishes in December. Okay, again, stretched a little bit, but it's very nicely made. We can put the furniture and everything in so it looks exactly like this. Okay, and this one is in London. This is Wimbledon. This one's already built. It's already tenanted. The person in it is paying £2,000 a month. The price on this one has been reduced, and it's a very good option if you like tennis. Okay, so the other things we do, just briefly, medical cover, we do life cover, and we can also cover critical illness. So if you have heart attack, cancer, stroke, or whatever, it will pay a lump sum out early. That's it. Thank you for your time. I hope it was useful. And any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Hello. Wow, that's a lot. My head's spinning. I've always understood. I have a will here in Thailand with one of my wives, and I've always understood that if I die, then the American Embassy comes down. In fact, I gave it to the American Embassy. They come down and they follow it to the T. The letter. Does that mean it still goes to court? What do you call probate? Probate. Yeah, well, a court has to decide, a judge has to decide whether your will is valid or it isn't valid. Okay? If they decide that it is valid, okay, it's a fairly simple test. You've got to be sane, you've got to know what you're doing, you've got to be over the age of 18, and it's got to be signed by 2 independent witnesses. If they decide that that's the case and it fits in with local laws, okay, there are some jurisdictions, like I said, you know, France, Germany, where you can't get around the rules. So they will determine whether that's appropriate or not. But the court has to issue a grant of probate. Okay, your consulate or your embassy could administer it. They could be the executor of it, but they still need the court's permission to get at your assets. Yeah. So that's what takes the time. Sometimes it can be quite quick, but from experience, we're normally thinking 3 to 6 months minimum. Okay. What about your other wife, by the way? Well, I have to have one for my girlfriend too. Same will or not? Different, huh?
Yeah. The trust is perfect for the girlfriend.
Trust me.
Bypass the wife completely.
Yeah, trust me. Yeah.
Could I just remind you, just one question at the time, please?
Hi. Good morning. Thanks for a very informative talk. My question is, if you've got assets in London, sorry, I'm domiciled in England, but I'm expat for tax reasons here, whatever. So you have an asset in London, you have an asset here, right? Now, I've never heard of the executors saying, well, we've sold the asset here, we've passed all the information to the UK, and you've got to pay, say you've got a house for 5 million baht here, you had to send $1 million or 2 million baht back to London to pay the tax, some of the extra tax. Can you tell me what happens in that circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on different jurisdictions. But basically, when you die, they have to report it to the British Embassy, yeah? So the British Embassy will immediately look at it and go, can we get some tax out of this guy? If they feel that they can, then they will basically go, right, we want that paid. Now, it might be that they'll find it more difficult to get money out of Thailand and get paid back to the UK. But if you have a UK asset, they will keep that UK asset until you pay the tax. Yeah, they can get more control over that than they can something in Thailand. If you have a foreign wife, a foreign national as a wife, okay, in the UK, okay, if I marry a UK citizen and I die, my wife will get all my assets free of charge, okay? No tax. It will pass from spouse to spouse, tax-free, okay? It's only when it passes down to my children or other people that I will get taxed on it. Okay? If you've married a foreign national, that's not always the case. It used to be that you had the allowance, 325,000 plus an extra 55,000, which they added on for your wife, but then it would still get taxed because it's coming out of the UK and it's going overseas. Okay, now that got taken to court and contested. And someone said it's not fair. you know, that you're discriminating against my Thai wife. So the UK government said, fine, no problem. Okay, what you can do is your wife can declare herself UK domiciled, okay, and then we will pass it across tax-free. Okay, so if your wife then declares a UK domicile and then she dies, technically the UK can get all her assets as well as yours, yeah? So the UK government said, fine, if that's what you want to do, you want to pass it across to your Thai wife free from tax, she's UK domiciled now. And then they put a time limit on it. They said basically, okay, I think it was originally 2 years. If your wife doesn't go to the UK and she has no intention of living there over a 2-year period, we'll let it drop. Okay, your wife just got the assets free from tax. I think then they extended it to 5 years. So there is a window where you could get taxed a lot more, but potentially your wife can still get it free from UK inheritance tax if she declares herself domiciled. She has 2 years to which to declare that. Okay?
So what I'm saying is basically they will look at the probate here and say it's worth 100,000, 200,000, and they will take that into consideration with your London inheritance tax.
Yeah, in the UK, inheritance tax is the only worldwide tax. Okay, income tax they don't apply to when you're moved overseas, but death tax they do. And they'll look at your whole estate, no matter where it is. Okay, if they can find it, they'll tax you on it, and then they'll bring it all together, and then they will tax you. If you give gifts away, you know, you can give away as much money as you want, but you have to live for 7 years. If you don't, they will call the gifts back in order, and then they will start taxing them, depending on the tapering and how long it's been passed. So the UK, the inheritance tax bill in the UK, I don't know the exact figures, but the amount of money the UK government is receiving from death tax has like quadrupled in the last 10 years. They're very, very stringent on it. And you might feel, okay, well, I'm overseas, you know, I'll get away with it. There was a story of Richard Burton, sort of well-known story in our field. He moved overseas. You probably all remember Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. But he moved to Israel. He was there for 20 odd years. He had Israeli citizenship. He had a house there. He bought a burial plot in Israel. He told the UK government he was now Israeli and he was going to be buried in Israel and is no longer any part of the UK. He then died, and as they were putting his box in the hole, they put the Welsh flag on it. And the UK government went, his allegiance is still to Wales. You're going to tax it. They got him. You know, if they want to get you, they will get you. It's not easy. If you go on the Inland Revenue website, it will tell you how to be declared non-domiciled. And there's a list about 3 pages long that you have to complete. Okay?
Over here. Over here.
On your right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
My husband and I have just one joint account in England.
Okay.
It's our only asset over there, and we have it purely and simply because we have small pensions that the companies refuse to send overseas.
Okay.
So we take the money out perhaps once a year, a very small amount. We still need to have a will in the UK for that.
Ideally, yes, but it depends on the value of it.
Very low, we're talking about maybe 3,000 a year.
Then, you know, it's not likely to affect anyone's life to that great extent if they have to wait a little while for it. It could be that if you wanted to, you could set up some kind of power of attorney for children or whatever in the UK. So you could maybe set up a power of attorney saying, if we both die, then my children have access to that money to pay my bills.
They all live here.
Sorry?
They all live here.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's probably one of those things. It depends on the value and how much effort you want to put in. But ideally, I would say yes, get a will, because it makes it simple to get the money out. But if it's really not that much money and you're taking it out annually and just letting it build up, it's up to you. It's up to you. But yeah, technically, I would say it would be easier to get one.
On your left, please, sir.
Thank you for your presentation, very comprehensive. A bit of an unfortunate timing, I think. Just a general question. I know the agreement between the British government and Hong Kong in China what was made. But this week, as we've all seen, the protests, the Chinese trying to muscle in. Now, a lot of your focus is on the immunity enjoyed by Hong Kong. Do you think there's any danger of this immunity decreasing in the, well, not distant future, maybe not next week, because I see the protests, they've subdued it a bit now. But it's an example of China going against what was agreed. Do you think this might develop onto Hong Kong losing some of its immunity?
Sure. Yes, I do. I lived in Hong Kong for 15 years. I saw it eroding while I was there. I think, the Chinese government, the agreement is 2047. It takes full, it can do what it likes, but up till 2047, they've got to keep, the freedom of the press and the courts and so on. China being China, to me, they're eroding it slowly in the background. And I've seen changes in terms of, press freedoms and what they're reporting and how they're reporting and so on, change quite a bit. Okay? Will that affect Hong Kong's ability to be a main financial centre? I don't think it will, because the Chinese have as much interest in keeping that as a world financial centre as anybody else. Will the courts be as enforceable? I don't know. I can see slowly parts of Hong Kong system eroding away. Okay? The reason that we make this very, very flexible with no surrender penalties is if you see that happening and you don't like it, you can just take your money out. Okay? So at the moment, I think it's an excellent place to have your money. I think it's probably going to be an excellent place for another 15, 20 years. Is it going to get more Chinese? Yes, I think it will. But if it gets to a stage where you're getting very uncomfortable with it, then you basically say, bring my money out, I'll put it somewhere else. Okay? And in that situation, you might find that we've already preempted it and we've maybe set something up to which you can move the money to. The Chinese are many things, but they're very money conscious, and I don't think they'll do anything too drastic to affect that. It does depend on the Hong Kong people though, because if they keep kicking off and they keep putting the Chinese in a very difficult position, Chinese patience will run out at some point. Okay? But my feeling is that's not going to happen for many, many years.
Yeah, one question. I noticed you do health insurance. What is your age limit for that?
It depends on the provider. Most companies will, if you're under 65, they will cover you.
Nobody here.
If you already have medical insurance and then you go above that age, they tend to just keep renewing it until you don't need it anymore, basically. But to start one, it's quite difficult to get above the age of 70. Okay, we can organise it for people in their early 70s, but the cost is very high. And often people look at it and go, I don't want to pay $7,000 a year for it. Yeah. So we can do it, probably up to I think 74, 75, but it will be expensive. Yeah. The Thai government's talking about medical insurance. Before anyone asks, we don't know what that's going to be yet, so we can't give any advice on whether medical insurance is fit in with that or they don't. We're going to have to wait and see what the terms are. Yep.
Just keeping with the international flavour, I'm from Australia, as I said, but you mentioned wives. My situation is I've got 2 grown children in Australia, I'm divorced. I've been in a relationship for 3 years with a Thai lady. Where does the de facto relationship fit in Thailand in comparison to what I'm familiar with in Australia and as rights to your estate?
Yeah, in Thai, my opinion would be if you're not married, your children would inherit, not your girlfriend. It would go direct to your children. You can create a will to pass it across to your girlfriend if you want to. You can do a trust to do it. But there's no legal relationship, as far as I'm aware, in Thailand between a guy and a girlfriend. You have to be married.
Thank you. That's the general information I've had previously. And I
Okay.
Okay, sir. We have a second.
You're out there, John?
This is John now.
Okay, one more question. If I divorce my girlfriend that I met at SOE 6, and I have a will, a legitimate will with you, and we divorce, do I have to cancel that somehow, or does that just disappear, or what happens to it?
Getting divorced doesn't invalidate a will. Okay? If you remarry, if you go to Nana or something and meet someone there and remarry, then that would invalidate the old will. But my recommendation would be, as you're getting divorced, to change your will, unless you're happy for your ex-wife to receive all your money.
Yes. How to say? If I die, what's happened with my bank account? You said it gets frozen. If there are two names, my name and the name of my daughter, what's happened?
Okay, as far as banking law goes, you've got a joint account, yeah? If something material changes on that account, you have the responsibility of telling the bank. Okay, so if you were to die, your daughter could run in and take all the money out of the bank, okay, and put it in her purse and, go down Chanel or something. But technically, by doing that, she's committed fraud because she hasn't told the bank that something material has changed on the account. Okay, now, my opinion is, if you're in Thailand and your wife or girlfriend is Thai, and they went in and did it, they would probably get away with it. Okay? If it's your wife that's died and you go in and strip all the money out, we're probably going to get done. So technically it is fraud. Now, whether they would enforce it or not, I don't know. Yeah?
That's it, by the looks of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Sorry, we've got somebody else here. Sorry.
Just a review. My wife is English. I'm an American. My assets are both in the United States and here. We have property here, income from the United States and here. As I understand from what you said, if I die, the properties, everything, incidentally, my wife is English, but she's never been in England. If I die, all of the funded funds that we have come to her without any tax.
If you die, okay, it's your domicility that will be dominant. So it will be American tax laws. Okay, that often depends on what state you're in. Different states have different tax laws, so you have to look at your own state and find out what the tax law would be, whether there is death duty, whether there isn't. But what I would suggest you do is have a will to make sure, if it's in joint names, depends on the way you set the property up as well. If you set it up 100% each, or 50% each, if you set it up 100% each, it should pass across automatically to your wife. If you set it up 50-50, then your portion will be determined by your estate and your will. Okay? Do you follow that?
Okay, yes, I'm particularly concerned about the property here in Thailand going directly to her. From the suggestion that you made that property would go direct to her because she has never been domiciled in England.
Okay. Well, so if you died, English law or tax law probably wouldn't have any impact because it's you died. If she dies, then English law may apply.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah, is that okay?
One over here, I think last one.
Okay.
Thanks very much for the talk. Could you tell us a little more about the Domicile Rule? Because most of us here move country to country, how it actually affects us. Thanks very much.
Okay. Domicile is basically, it tends to be where you were born. Okay, so I was born in the UK, I have a UK passport, my domicile is UK. I've lived in Hong Kong, I've lived in Thailand. That's where I was a resident at those given moments in time. But technically I'm still British, yeah? So I'll revert back. You can change your domicile by fulfilling certain criteria, and then you nominate a domicile of choice. Okay, so you can say, I don't want to be domiciled in the UK anymore, my domicile of choice is Thailand. Okay, but if you do that and then you move somewhere else, the British government will go, okay, so your domicile of choice isn't Thailand then. So then you would revert back to the UK, and then you would have to build up your relationship with your new jurisdiction enough to convince the UK government that that's where you're based. You can write to the Inland Revenue and say, actually my domicile of choice is not the UK still, I have no intention of going back, but I am going to move from Thailand to Cyprus. Yeah? And they'll probably acknowledge it and go, okay, fair enough. But they won't give you an answer and go, yeah, you're definitely not domiciled now. There used to be a way of testing it. And the way of testing it was, you'd invest a certain amount of money in the UK, okay, and you would go above the inheritance tax limit, okay? So you would put a certain amount of money in and then you would go £10,000 over. And then you would go to the Inland Revenue and go, please tell me what my tax bill is, okay? If the Inland Revenue come back saying you don't have a tax bill, you live overseas, they're basically telling you you're not domiciled in the UK, okay? So people used it and they tested it and they got this reply back and they were like, okay, I'm not domiciled. So when I die, I can show, you've already tested me and you said I'm not domiciled, okay? So the Inland Revenue got wise to that, and basically what you do is you would send in this money with the extra 10K on top of it and they would just go, thanks. And they wouldn't reply. Yeah? So again, you were left in a position where you don't know if you're domiciled or you're not. And it tends to come down to how much they want to get, how much they can potentially get from you. If it's a small amount of money, they're not really going to bother. If it's a large amount of money, they probably will. So, you know, it's an individual thing to look at and say, is it something that's going to affect me or not? My feeling on it is that, like all governments around the world, they're concentrating on implementing all the tax rules so they can get as much money as they possibly can. So even if it's like 10,000 quid, 20,000 pounds, if there's enough people doing it, they're making a good deal of money out of it. So they're pushing to claim more taxes. The UK government's pushing to get more money from driving offences and everything. They're just trying to get money. So my feeling is it's going to get, you know, with the reporting going on, with the bank accounts telling everybody, you know, they have to report back to your home government to tell you what you got in your bank account, what you got in investments and so on. It's all been set up so they can keep taxing people. And they're likely to be implementing that more stringently. Okay, the best way around it, as you've seen here, will planning, trust planning. Okay, you keep control of your money, you can dictate what happens to it, you can get it back. But if anything goes wrong, the UK government can't assess it. Because technically the owner hasn't died, you have. Okay, so come and talk to us later if you want more information on anything like that.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before you depart, Lee, we have a certificate of appreciation for a wonderful talk on how to manage our finances, and I'm sure we'll be all a lot richer in the graveyard later on. Okay. Tax-free.